The views and opinions expressed in this podcast are not those of New Zambia or its employees, but of the presenter and the respective guests. The New Zambia podcast is powered and proudly brought to you by New Zambia Media.
Hello, welcome to the second episode of the New Zambia podcast, and I'm your host, Wezi. In today's episode, we are talking about the Zambian creative landscape. I'd like to assume and believe that most of us, if not all of us, understands the influence and the impact that the creative industry has played since time immemorial. I came across a very interesting quote by the great Albert Einstein, who quote, and I quote, "Creativity is intelligence having fun." I've never come across a definition, obviously, that simplifies what creativity is all about. Because creativity is intelligence, creativity is knowledge, creativity is research, creativity is standing out. Because obviously a lot of people are doing the things that we do, but what is going to differentiate you from what the rest are doing? That's where the fun begins. Imagine a world that does not have music, a world that does not have movies, pictures. I'm pretty sure that world will definitely be the father and mother of all boredom. Does that even exist though? But yeah, creativity heals, creativity is fun, creativity is information, creativity is anything that we look at. The creative industry is comprised of a number of players, starting from artists, music producers, actors, models, influencers, video producers, photographers, cinematographers, because we talk of entertainment, that's creativity. We talk of recreation, that is being creative, because there has been someone who invented something that we do for recreation. It all came out from creativity, and that is why Albert Einstein calls creativity as intelligence having fun. So big ups to all the creatives out there, and thank you for everything that you have done for us and that you always continue to do for us. I personally believe that creativity is everywhere. Creativity is surrounding us, because if I'm not listening to something, I'm obviously watching something. And if I'm not watching something, I'm obviously reading something. And if I'm not reading something, I'm obviously doing something that is obviously creative. So creativity is power. Power to cry, power to laugh, power to love, power to be all sorts of emotional. Because creativity is for the soul. And that's the power that creativity has. So I was reading the launch of a global report by the UNESCO, dubbed Reshaping Cultural Policies, Advancing Creativity for Development. And this 2018 report, they were saying that the creative industry sector generates annual revenue of $2,250 billion and global exports of over $250 billion. Now those are big figures. And they further say that the cultural and creative industry currently provide nearly 30 million jobs worldwide and employ more people aged between 15 and 29 than any other industry. Now, I can only wonder how much those numbers are right now, since this is a 2018 global report. In order to get a highlight on the Zambian creative landscape, I had the privilege of having a chat with Mika, who is a creative. Mika is specialized in digital strategy, social media management, multimedia design and communications, and her portfolio showcases viral hashtag campaigns, communications programs, branding for various organizations including Warner Music Australia, UNICEF, World Food Programme, Google, Pepsi, Air New Zealand, and the Electoral Commission of Zambia. Now, ladies and gentlemen, please help me welcome Mika.
Thank you very much.
So, how do you think the Zambian creative industry is? How is it doing? How is it faring? And before we go there, what's your definition of what a creative industry is and who a creative is?
I would like to start by stating that creativity is driven by ideas, ideas that stimulate, communicate messages, or solve problems. So the creative industry here in Zambia is a contributor to employment, to the development of productions, potentially manufacturing enterprises, and also the long-term technological progress of Zambia. That sort of sums up for me what the creative industry represents here. Yes. So these are individuals who sort of utilize their skills or they generate ideas to communicate messages, which in turn should solve problems. If you've seen Steve Jobs' Apple commercial, it sort of characterizes creatives as imaginative, typically risk takers. They tend to think outside the box. They bypass conventional norms. So the result is superheroes, big thinkers, people who create big ideas that lead to the collective human progress. That's in a nutshell what a creative is.
You've talked about thinking outside the box. How flexible do you think our society is when it comes to embracing the creative industry and any form of creativity?
I think the human tendency is we like the comfort zone. And here, especially in Zambia, we have a very conservative society, which means that usually new ideas are resisted because we like traditions and we like long held conventions that should carry on from generation to generation. So when a group of people comes up who tends to think beyond what we consider the norm, it's met with resistance. But I think with persistence, that's the only way you can bring about change. Well, look, the emergence of, let's say, Chinese-led industry has shown us that there's a lot of untapped opportunity here in Zambia. For the creative industry, the COVID-19, for example, has legitimized digital transformation in a way that is unprecedented. So creatives need to take advantage of this new frontier by creating their own opportunities. So yes, it is sustainable. Sometimes it seems that because in Zambia we have a mindset of jobs, but I'm saying we should start creating our own opportunities. We've seen the Chinese take advantage of that, of these untapped opportunities. And we've also seen the COVID-19 bring about new opportunities in the digital realm. So for the first time, the pandemic has made it possible, for example, to earn international wages. You can work for offshore companies while working remotely. So these are just some practical examples of how we can leverage creative sector. Well, here in Zambia, it's really about creating our own opportunities. I think there's a lot of space in entrepreneurship and in enterprising ventures. Also, you will see that more and more industries are beginning to recognize the need for a workforce and a specialized workforce for that matter. So there's a growing demand that cannot be avoided, and I think that there's opportunity to exploit that.
Do you think it's getting the attention and the credit it deserves as an industry?
In Zambia, perhaps most African countries, the creative industry, for me, has really been assaulted by the education system, mainly because the colonial style of education doesn't value innovative and entrepreneurial thinking. So it's designed to suffocate creative expression or any type of rationale that promotes critical thinking and analysis, especially if it goes against the established norms. Um, and all this is diametrically opposed to the creative practice, which really promotes thinking outside the box. So I think for these reasons, mostly because of this negative PR that we've gotten via the education system is underappreciated. So more can be done, but the need beats the whether the perception is that creatives are, are necessary or not, or a relevant industry or not, because the need is there for all to see. Look, as opposed to being relegated to general work or general workers, I think multi-talented individuals can opt for multi-specialized roles, such as, let's say, multimedia designer. Like me, myself, I have a bachelor's degree in interactive multimedia, stroke creative services, and advertising. Those are my majors. Which means interactive multimedia means I've I've trained in almost every facet of creative media, including graphic design, sound editing, video editing, animation. Um, so I'm sort of like a Jane of all trades, master of none. So I've learned, for example, Flash and some animation software, but I would not say I'm an animator. I can use Illustrator and Photoshop and all this. Um, Previously, I wouldn't really call myself a graphic designer. I would say I'm a multimedia artist, but now I've sort of enhanced my graphic design skills to the level that I am a graphic designer. Um, so I think for multi-skilled people, they can look at multi-specialized roles as opposed to generally, general roles. Um, this basically multi-specialized. By multi-specialized roles, I mean roles that sort of will allow them to gain expertise in maybe more than one or perhaps two fields of knowledge, not six, not seven, but maybe two or three. So in terms of value, a multimedia designer, for example, and these can be the disadvantages, may not be comparable to, let's say, a user interface designer or a mobile apps developer or an animator. However, they would have mastered enough to be paid reasonable wages compared to somebody who's just an all-rounder. So let's say you've got a bit of the graphic design skill and you can also do videos to a decent or professional level. You might not be as well paid as a cinematographer, for example, but you definitely be better off than somebody who just says they're just a media practitioner or a PR practitioner who can do a bit of video, a bit of graphics, a bit of that. So that that's the advantage is you're going to be paid a bit lower than those who have really crafted their expertise to an extremely high level. Because it's obvious that the more specialized you are, or the more expertise you have in a field, the higher your wages will be. This is why programmers and games developers and user interface designers and search engine optimizers and social media marketers, they are paid more than just general communicators. So, yeah. I think we've seen this in the general media industry with Mika Zambia, which is the regulating body for media agencies and media agents. There's also IBA, which I guess is the licensing authority for media agencies. So you can't just go and set up a fake news, publication because IBA will just will not even grant you a license. And at the moment with creatives, we don't really have this sort of standard body. So I think definitely setting up that body will be the first step. And it will require a concerted approach and the development of a consortium with key media industry players, and state departments like the Ministry of Labor, for example, those could be engaged. So you'd have to identify, sit down and sort of identify which key players to engage in this consortium, and then would also need to do some benchmarking with international creative committees and agencies and bodies out there that are sort of operating with a similar mandate or function. All these bodies like Creative Week, Ad Week, and so on and so forth. We can look into them. Yes. So that's basically the approach that I would take would be to initially do the groundwork. I could sit here and speculate as to how, because we would have to develop a framework for how that should be done. But it definitely needs to be done. I think it's not really a question. It's not really a question of is it united enough. It's just that it's really more of a question of has anyone pioneered that initiative? Because I think if somebody steps up, or a few groups or individuals step up, I think you will find that there will be an overwhelming interest because it's in the collective interest. So I think what just needs to happen is that some key industry leaders, some key people, influencers, the change makers, the change agents, the media practitioners that have been in the industry and the creative practitioners for a long time, they need to get together and come up with this protocol, with this industry protocol and blueprint for how I think and start setting the standard for how the industry should operate. I think the media industry in general has had those standards in place, but specifically the creative industry, organizing as an industry is a new thing in Zambia. So I think it just needs some industry, leaders and think tanks to come together to spearhead that initiative. I think the first thing that the industry is lacking is really a real big appreciation for specialization here in Zambia. So, in spite of the high level of ingenuity and growing demand for creative services, the industry is not properly incentivized. Hence, there's lack of a specialized workforce. I don't know if you've read the book Wealth of Nations by Adam Smith. He made the proposition that specialization and division of labor are two of the primary contributors to economic growth and economic efficiency in a nation. So specialization, for example, it creates a more efficient supply chain, it boosts productivity, and it leads to increased output. When companies or individuals focus on specific tasks, so like if you've got an agency that produces just animations, or an agency just for cinematography, or an agency just for social media or for graphics, it increases the overall output and production as well, and the quality of productions that you'll be getting, as opposed to generalist media agencies trying to do everything. They're not specialists in digital strategy. They're not specialists in in illustrations or character design or anything like that. So specialists or experts also have market niche. They have that advantage. So therefore, they become authorities in their practice, and they have comparative advantage over competitors. So I think specialization for me is one of my first recommendations for the Zambian creative industry. I also think that in a country that relies so much on loss-making extractive mineral industries, the creative industry could do for Zambia what Nollywood and Afrobeat has done for Nigeria. These two creative spaces, like for Nollywood, has made the nation of Nigeria relevant on the world stage. So when you think of Nigeria, you think of Afrobeat, and you think of Nollywood. You don't think of them as an which they are, oil-producing nation. So and then it's clear that with tax dodging, mining corporations and foreign interests, for example, in Zambia's case, copper is just not going to dig us out of the economic crisis that we're in. So the creative sector has a lot to offer. The creative sector makes it possible to package and export Zambian culture as a commodity, in itself. We also need to recognize that apart from the obvious economic benefits, the creative sector can offer, it offers non-monetary value as well. So creatives have the power to reshape reality, socially engineering the populace and redesigning the culture to represent the aspiration of the Zambian people on the global stage. Therefore, we can potentially recast the nation as an Afro-futuristic superpower. I would also like to commend the new generation of Zambian creatives, the animators, illustrators, and again, like I said, the music producers and fashion designers and the artists that are finally starting to tell those African stories. So the creative industry has the power to take away, has the power to bring power back into, into African hands, because for the first time, we Africans are starting to redefine how the world sees us. Previously, we were shaped by condescending narratives from the Western media. We're being overshadowed by these patronizing stereotypes of poverty and suffering and disease. And with the emergence of social media, for example, it has given us a platform and made it possible for us to present our own point of view. So I think the creative industry as a whole has the ability to bring all these points that I've just brought out. So I think, lack of sort of a body that sort of speaks to, the creative needs is definitely a big one. And also just like I said, the academic system particularly has just, okay. Yeah, so I think the academic system as well has sort of presented the creative industry as, through the school system as not very important, not very relevant. Therefore, it's not properly incentivized for the kind of value that it could potentially actually bring. So, like I said, if we as a nation rely on copper, then the creative industry can be considered the new copper that that can potentially export culture as a commodity for us, just like the Nigerians have done it. So, I think creatives are suffering from negative propaganda about the industry. So on Facebook, it's Mika Mwambazi, just my name, Mika Mwambazi. You can type it in, my page will come up. And on LinkedIn, it's also Mika Mwambazi. If you want to find me or catch me on Twitter, it's Mimi's Twitter. So it's MIMIZ _ CWEETA. So that's basically my handle on Twitter. You can also reach me via email, which is mikaforever@yahoo.com, and I'm sure that you can drop it in the comments. Yeah.
There you have it, ladies and gentlemen. This has been Wezi for the New Zambia podcast. Until next time, it's bye-bye and God bless you.